Mark Stein is an author and a columnist. He's watched all of this pretty carefully, and he joins us now. What do you think of that, Mark? The whole "our viewers are terrible, consumers are bad if they don't like us" argument. Is that a winner?
No, it's not. And the idea of converting yourself into a victim group of I guess, journalist Americans, the latest hyphenated victim group, that is really going to work. And I think the problem is, to extend your potato chips analogy, is they're actually selling a bag that has all the packaging of potato chips, and there are no potato chips inside. That's the problem with the Russia story. They went bananas over that Malaysian plane that disappeared a couple of years ago, but at least there was a Malaysian plane that was here one minute and wasn't there the next. Here, there actually is no Malaysian plane, and they're covering it. I mean, you said Jeff Zucker is telling them to stop covering real news. You're not entirely accurate on that, Tucker. Yesterday, they interviewed Elmo about what he thought of Syrian refugees. And oddly enough, Elmo happens to like them. And that actually was the least nutty thing CNN has done in the last few weeks. It's the nearest thing to real news.
It's sad. I mean, there are actually a lot of talented people over there. I work there. I know a bunch of them. They're smart, serious people, but they're being pushed to the side in favor of this garbage. What about the prediction? You heard Rush Limbaugh, who you sit in for sometimes, say that they're going to be a casualty of the Trump administration.
Yes, I think that's likely, because the argument that Van Jones was saying, that it's a nothing burger, but it's ratings, that's true in the short term. But there are diminishing returns to this, which is that it's a Russian investigation with no Russians. The only Russian anyone ever mentions is the ambassador, who's like strolling around lunching all over the District of Columbia. He's the only sinister Russian in this story. It's a Russian investigation without any Russians. And at some point, it's going to be like one of those Russian dolls that all the tourists like. You open the big Russian doll, there's a smaller Russian doll, there's a teensy-weensy Russian doll, and then you open up the last Russian doll and there's nothing. And at some point, which I think actually the bulk of the American public have figured out already, there is actually nothing. We're down to the last minuscule Russian doll, and there's nothing inside when you open that up.
So you think that that's a critique of CNN, but I think CNN would call that hate speech. Do you think it should be allowed to, I mean, do you think you're making them feel unsafe by criticizing them?
Well, they actually are advancing the argument now that Trump pushing back against the media, which nobody likes. Nobody likes. Everybody, and I say this as someone in the media, and you're in the media, and you know that. People hate the media. Everybody hates the media.
That's true.
And they hate Jim Acosta going bananas at the White House press conference because the big, mean press secretary won't let him turn his camera on. I'm in favor, by the way. I thought Elmo was excellent on CNN yesterday. I'm in favor of replacing Jim Acosta with Elmo at the White House press conference. The fact is, the public is on the White House's side. If Sean Spicer wants to conduct his press conference in interpretative dance, he can do that, and the public, by and large, if it's a choice between Sean Spicer announcing the Obamacare bill in interpretative dance or Jim Acosta doing his drama queenery, then people would rather have the interpretative dance of Sean Spicer. They're not going to go anywhere with this.
I think, though, the idea, and look, I'm not in charge over there, but the idea is you identify a relatively small but consistent audience of true believers who were sort of, read into the esoteric theory of Freemasonry or Russia conspiracy or whatever they're selling, and you kind of just go with them. You're no longer a national network. You're speaking to a small group.
Yes, and they're very enthusiastic. The trouble, I think the serious point here, though, is that at some point the interests of the Democrat Party diverge from CNN and the other Russia investigation obsessives. Because every time they actually succeed in dragging someone into Congress to talk about it, what happens is it reveals more about Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton or telling Jim Comey not to call the Hillary investigation an investigation. And so it's actually, the Russia investigation is really a Democrat investigation. And the more you focus on it, the more it it drags in Susan Rice and Loretta Lynch and eventually the president himself. And at some point, the Democrats are going to say, look, it's fine for you to do your ratings, but can we please have more Elmo and less Russia? Because this is going to kill us with Loretta Lynch and Susan Rice and all the rest. Their interests are not aligned on this, Tucker.
So what do they do at that point? Do they go back to finding a new murder trial to cover? Or, I mean, what's kind of the next phase for them?
Well, I think the trouble when you go down this thing, it's like we used to have these things long before television, 80 years ago, when there would supposedly be a 5-year-old boy trapped in a well, and the media would camp out around the well to wait for the little boy to be rescued. And that was dramatic in a sob sister way. But if there's no little 7-year-old in the well, if there actually is nothing there, then all you've done in the long run, I think, is destroyed yourself. And to go back to that Malaysian jet thing, they actually are, in this case, they are the... Do you remember on CNN when they thought the Malaysian jet might have flown into a black hole?
Entirely possible.
That's actually what they've done now. They've taken a very small story, and in expanding it, they're flying their network into a black hole. And whether they can emerge from that, I mean, I realize that's the kind of plot twist. That's Anderson Cooper in X-Men 12 or The Avengers when Loki tears up the space-time continuum. And only Anderson Cooper and Elmo in the CNN spaceship can wrest Earth back from the rupture in the space-time continuum. That's the only plot twist left for CNN at this point.
It's going to take me a full day to recover from that. Mark Stein, that's so great.
That's where they're going. It's Elmo at the, Anderson Cooper with Elmo at his co-pilot. That's good luck with that, CNN.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
You would agree with me that the Russians have taken no active measures in an American election while Donald Trump has been president. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think it might. I actually don't know. I don't know what happened.
Have we had any elections since he's been president?
Yes, we've had congressional elections.
And you think that the Russians have taken some active measures in those elections?
I don't know the answer to that question.
We do know that the Russians took active measures in the last presidential election.
Well, I think the intelligence communities of the United States are confirmed on that.
I think we're all in agreement with that. Who was president of the United States when that occurred?
That was President Obama, as you know.
And you know he was aware that this was going on.
Yeah.
Indeed, he's admitted that he talked to Mr. Putin about that. Is that correct?
So you heard my testimony about President Obama. I have great respect for President Obama. This was a difficult decision. I think that President Obama, with the benefit of hindsight, should have acted more resolutely, quickly, to be transparent with the American people. But he did take action. And what disturbs me about President Trump is that he's not investigating, has taken no action.
Got that. But I'm talking about somebody that could have done something about this while it was going on. You're aware that President Obama talked to Mr. Putin about that, are you not, in the summer of 2016?
That's what the news reports say. I also know that the Obama administration briefed the 8 senior members of Congress early on, that there were public statements made by Jay Johnson, I think on October 7th. So they did take action. It's not as if the Obama administration just was silent on this issue.
And indeed, when President Obama told Mr. Putin that we knew that they were taking active measures, that was indeed classified information, was it not?
Well, you know, I think if you're the President of the United States and you're trying to deliver a stiff diplomatic mission, you're well within your rights to tell Putin what you think he may be doing.
Couldn't agree with you.
In fact, that's the object of the conversation.
Couldn't agree with him more. Yeah. And that's actually the purpose of classified information. It's no good if you collect it and don't use it. Fair statement.
Well, not always. Sometimes you don't want that information ever to see the light of day.
What else should President Obama have done?
You know, and this is Monday morning quarterbacking by me.
I understand that.
And I appreciate the fact that he finally did take action on the sanctions. I think if you go back and look at it, the American people, in my judgment, deserve to know what was happening clearly. You have to ring the village bell. And we should have had a more immediate response that was painful to the Russians, whether that was immediate sanctions or some type of offensive action that we could have taken by covert means against them. And so I think there were a variety of options. I wasn't there, so I don't want to micromanage this, but I do think that he could have done more. But my testimony clearly shows that President Trump has taken no action whatsoever, and I think that's irresponsible.
Got that. But the description you gave, you would agree with me that the Obama administration did not take the significant action that was needed, including informing the American people, which would have gone a long ways to countering what the Russians did. Fair statement?
Well, I think that the Obama administration should have taken greater action, but the more pertinent question today is what our current president is not doing, and that has implications for Europe, and they're very negative.
To you, it's the more pertinent. To me, what more pertinent is what should have been done by the commander-in-chief who was in charge at that time.